change focus. And it's like, okay, do that on the computer.
Well, I can do an upgrade. It's part of it.
I don't want to do it.
And that's the stuff I'm good at, is the operations back end. Like, hey, figure this out. You know, make these servers talk to each other, or upgrade the office to this thing, or rebuild these computers. Like all the operations back end stuff, like that stuff I can do. I don't know that particular server or OS, but it's a GUI. There's Google. I'm fine. Figure it out.
All right, I'm gonna look at this video for class there.
So are we late today, or where is everybody?
People went home late today. I mean, Ruben's always 10 minutes late, but
yeah, that's understandable. But
well, Mel's usually here, and he's
Mel
not.
is not.
And oftentimes, yeah, sometimes he shows up late as well.
That's I can ignore that. That's expected, and not unusual. But
with Mel missing, I think it makes it all feel weird. So I think we're here.
We're okay. We are starting. Okay, let's begin. So I'm assuming that you have watched that other video that I mentioned about, which is about infrastructure as code, which essentially means that you put your Git repository. In that Git, you put not only your code, but also any artifacts about your infrastructure itself. All the detail about how you connect, how do you put together your elements, your structure. In the case of this WordPress example that Dan wants to discuss, it will look something like this. You will have, at least to start with, one machine. Let's call it an EC2. Let's call it an EC2 instance that runs your web server, and that connects to another database of some sorts. And this can be either a machine on its own, or it can be your RDS from Amazon, or it can be another computer with EC2 instance running MySQL. So that's the kind of infrastructure you would have at the bare minimum. Actually, even bare minimum can be put all of these together in one box. That will be the bare minimum. And a two-machine setup would be something like database separated from the web server. And as you go scale up, you can do something like have a load balancer up on top, and then have app servers scaling them horizontally, loading it up like this, and have one database server, which could be your MySQL. That would be a blueprint, a connectivity of how these machines are all connected together to run your WordPress and then service your customer. And you can create this infrastructure, create this blueprint of what you need from the infrastructure perspective, put that all design itself in your Git repository. And then you have the WordPress software. That software itself that you can download from this location, you put that in your Git repository. And more importantly, this piece of software you probably don't change yourself. What you tend to change is these file structures inside called /wp-content or /wp-plugins. And sorry, I think the naming is somewhat different. It is under content you go and then you find plugins. That's the naming, I think. And then under content you will have /themes. So to correctly write this again, it will be wp-content, and under that you will have plugins, and under the same you will have themes. This is the dominant area where you will actually operate upon in your contributions to a WordPress setup. This is where you will buy some plugins or use your own existing pre-runs or create your own plugins and incorporate them in this folder somewhere here. If you buy a theme, it goes in here. If you use free themes, they also go in here. And you can create your own theme and put them all in this section. Similar to that, there will be a folder called Uploads, which is user-generated content, USG, that goes in the Uploads folder. And you can, basically what you want to do is, when you're looking at making a change, a delta, which is a representation of a change, and it will look something like a commit in a Git repository. Any change you make, you need to do a commit and then push. The cycle is change, commit, push, change, commit, push. Or even before the change, you do a pull, change, commit, push, pull, change, commit, push. That's the sequence that we operated last time we worked with it, right? Somebody's changing. It's a cycle going on. So you pull, then you make a change, and then you commit into your Git repository locally, and then you push the changes. So everybody else also can incorporate those changes in a high-level structure. This is how the look of a cycle would look like inside your Git as you work in a version control method. Inside that commit that you make a change anytime, you are changing any file in your WordPress directory. Any change that you make a change of, you need to keep track of what changed, what was there yesterday, and when I say yesterday, I mean previous commit. It can be as soon as recent as like 2 seconds ago. Previous commit, and what is there now. That change needs to be understood very carefully, and you can do that by managing your changes and putting every change you do inside a Git commit. Similar to that, any change you do in the architecture of the layout itself, like say for example, from one machine containing your web server and your database all together in one box. From this design, you then make a change to the architectural blueprint to run a load balancer and 2 machines and 1 database server. That becomes a change. So this change has to be captured with that same point in time snapshot, along with any code changes that you may have done. So in your Git repository, there will be conceptually 2 parts. One is the code itself that you are making change to, and the other part is the infrastructure that you are making now changes to, infrastructure. Any change you make in the infrastructure also get captured, and from a transition of a single machine over to a multiple machine setup like this, that change that you just made gets captured. And so if you decide that something goes, if you find something goes wrong, you can roll back. Which, when you roll back, what will happen is you destroy these machines, you create this single machine, and restore your previous commit into that just single machine, and everything is back up and normal. Because that's what you wanted if something goes wrong. Similarly, by the way, this delta was big, from a single machine to a 4-node setup, something like this. This was a big change. You can have minor, tiny little changes, like I changed the port on which I want these machines to be accessible from outside. And I don't want them to be 22 for SSH, but something like 2222, and I make the changes specifically because I want it to be different from everybody else to make it apparently more secure. Doesn't actually make more secure, just a different port.
Obscures it.
Yes, obscurity is a
Obscurity.
a very lame form of security. If you can find it, it's broken. So obscurity, if you want to accomplish, you can change the port, and that change you just made, only a subtle little change in the port in which SSH will run. If that changes, you need to incorporate in your Git commit. And if you roll back, all the changes associated with the change of port, along with your README instructions on how things are changing, how to access the machine, the documentation associated with your application will also get automatically changed. So when you're looking at a classic change management, you're modifying your code. You say change from 22 over to this port, right? and you incorporate your infrastructure to accommodate this change. Great. Then you have your documentation for your users that tell them that, earlier it was 22, now please use the -p 2222 option when you access SSH. So now you know that the users will also be notified that the documentation updated because of the code change you took, and the infrastructures also updated to incorporate this new behavior, and users are notified through updated documentation that this port is not useful anymore, go here. And so all that change control, if you do it methodically inside a git commit, you can roll back. And when you roll back, this goes away, comes back to 2.2, infrastructure changes itself, documentation also updates, and nobody gets confused as to what was the state. So you're putting the whole thing consistently in one common location so that people can understand what's going on, and you get the flexibility of rolling back and going forward as you find appropriate. Hey, did your machine work finally? Do you have another computer?
I put it on Hyper-V and I downloaded even.
So do you have a working solution? Good.
I have a working machine.
Virtual trusty.
I don't have the actual trusty, but
You downloaded Hyper-V, he's using
I downloaded the
generic
1.4 and
one.
put it in.
So you know what the problem now essentially is, that you need to disable Hyper-V for virtualization through VirtualBox to actually work. Now I know the problem.
No, that was his solution.
No, his solution is to walk away from trusty. That's not what I want. What I want you to run is to run trusty, and you're not able to run trusty on your laptop because your virtualization capabilities are taken away by Hyper-V
But you
software.
only newly installed that, right?
Yeah, but Hyper-V, none of the services were running well.
You don't know. You want to actually disable Hyper-V.
It's okay.
So you need to completely disable Hyper-V for VirtualBox to correctly work. Otherwise, they'll conflict.
Yeah, till last time I was not activating VirtualBox at all. Hyper-V at all.
But you don't know. Is it a managed machine or your machine?
It's a managed machine.
Managed machine. You don't know what people are doing to it.
Possible.
See, that may be the case. You don't know who's doing what to your machine because it's a managed machine. Somebody else is controlling it. They might have turned on services. If it is your computer, you would know. But if it's not your computer, it is definitely that's the problem. Somebody must have changed something, or a group policy might have pushed some feature, and some update might have come along. Who knows?
Update, basically.
Possibly update.
I did some updates after that. I started having problems.
So go look at control panel somewhere deep, and you will find that there's a place to uninstall Hyper-V. Remove that. You can bring it back after the class, no problem. You can just reinstall that portion, and it'll bring back your Hyper-V if you like. But downloading a regular off-the-shelf machine will not help you. You will struggle through every step because most of the dependencies are pre-installed in Trusty. Like you will see it right now as I progress along. You will see that I don't need to install Chef because Chef is already there in our Trusty. Right? And if you do you need a laptop?
No, the problem is I don't want to carry two laptops. I have another laptop at home.
Huh.
I can't carry two laptops.
That's a rich.
Because this I have to take back every day.
That's first world problems. That's what people call it. I don't want to hear about that. If you have a real problem that you need a laptop, tell me, I'll give it to you. But carrying two laptops is too much of a hassle for you. I have no answer.
That's why, I was telling, when I was telling thesis people, can I leave the laptop at the office? This is no, you have to carry it back.
Right. So you just put it in the car.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah. That'll work. Okay. Now, from a very high-level perspective, let us look at what this thing, the concept of chef, how does it actually work? And before I jump to that, I would like to ask you these questions. Like, have you had a chance to review some of the videos on chef already?
Oh, yeah.
What about you guys?
I've reviewed earlier,
Okay.
2-3 months back. So
I see.
not done it recent. Yesterday.
Okay. So let me then give you a quick idea behind what are the concepts that go along in the standard offering from the company behind it, which is called OpsCode. What they offer. This is the name of the company.
They changed it. No, they changed their name.
It used to be just chef.
Yeah, they changed it to OpsCode recently.
No. They
This
changed
was the old.
OpsCode to
This is the old name.
So
They have some Get Chef or something
Get
like
Chef,
that.
yeah.
No,
The website changed. It's to Get Chef.
that's weird. Not get chef, though.
And the product that they have is called Chef. And it is an open source product. They make money by providing a service. The service runs the server version of this thing. There's a client and there's a server. Chef client and Chef server. So they host the Chef server and provide that as a multi-tenant service to their customers and charge for it. That's how they make money. We will use that enterprise chef or the service that they have in the class. They are, I think, giving free 5 nodes for management. So we'll use that account. We'll create an account there and make use of it. We'll also use the same toolset, which is the Chef toolset, which has a client component and a server component. I think at least Shahul expressed interest in setting up his own server. So if we are, if there's more interest in the class, we'll do it and see how we can make use of, because this is an interesting scenario for people who want to use open source server on their own. Another different way of using the same software, which is called the solo mode, in which there is a different client binary. It's also a client, by the way, but the client binary is different. Different in that it does not need a server. And so when you don't need a server, that's the reason why it's called solo. It is also a client. And it runs pretty much like the client, except that it does not make server calls. Does not ping back to see what the server is telling me to do. So that's the conceptual idea behind these two types of usage models. So we have the client and server usage model, and the other model is being solo, which is also a client. And in your VM, you should be able to start up a VM, the one you already have, and see what machines this machine has already installed. So that's what we'll be doing next, is just to identify components installed already. As soon as the machine starts, Chef client so that's the component loaded here. And both of them are the same version. This machine does not have server running here because the server is supposed to be running away from you, somewhere away from you in the cloud. So we have in this machine both components already preloaded. This version 11.12.4 may not be the latest version as of right now. It may be like so many days old. don't try to update it. Let's stick to this version, which is everywhere. Everybody stays on the same version number. So we are golden. So we want to go back to the golden state as and when we want to. So remember that you have a snapshot taken in your VM. You need to have a snapshot like this somewhere saved already before you begin working, because we keep going back to the snapshot as and when we need to. In addition to that particular component, let's also examine the last time we ran this exercise, which was running our solo, running Chef Solo in the exercise, which was this, no, not that. Using Chef Solo, this exercise, we had this particular GitHub repository that we had to visit. In there we had a file, and we studied this briefly, but essentially what this is doing is, in the last step here, if you look at that last step, what it is doing is running in sudo mode the chef binary and passing on some arguments. If you look at what was the binary defined, it was in this particular location. As you will see that this is not the one you mentioned last time, RVM, but it is RBENV. That's what we have been using inside of our VM. Is we use RBENV, which is a way of managing Ruby versions, similar to RVM. And if you go back here in our exercise, you will find that this location is where Chef Solo sits in that VM. So you can actually find out its location by typing which, and it will give you the location where it is actually sitting. Now, if you look at a typical Chef Solo run, it basically looks at this command and takes the solo.rb file and a node.json, which is the DNA impression that we provided. So we'll go and look at these two file arguments that we are passing to the script also. If you go here and look at this solo.rb, this file essentially says that take all the cookbooks in this location, in this path called cookbooks, and pick up my JSON attributes from this path called node.json. That's pretty much this file says in the solo.rb, the argument that we pass. If you look at this segment, node.json, what it is doing is creating a temporary directory and running the recipe inside main cookbook. So we need to go find out what main cookbook contains. And there is a cookbooks folder inside which we have a main cookbook, inside which we have a recipes folder, inside which we have a default, and the default says do this, which is basically says Apache action to be done is in fact there is a different way of thinking about these commands. The commands are not defining how to do it, but defining a state of what it should be. And there is a very subtle difference, and remember that in mind, and I'm going to repeat that because it's worthwhile. The idea is to define not the how, but the what.
I didn't really understand that until I heard something else that said, that was talking about, so instead of saying, like, I want a package installed, here's the command you need to run for the package. Instead of saying, it's Ubuntu, so do apt-get, or it's Red Hat, so do yum, you just put the package name, and it figures out what it needs to do to actually install the package.
Mm-hmm.
You can give it a little template that says, make sure that the service stays on when it gets rebooted, and here's what port it should run on, and things like that. But the the basics, like how just, hey, install a package, it knows how to do that. And so you don't have to tell it. You don't have to specify.
Can you show me the recipe?
You have to mention it's given to.
Nope, you don't have to mention that. It figures all that stuff out. It's a very smart, the application chef is very smart and it knows like Ubuntu needs this kind of stuff and Red Hat needs this kind of stuff.
So any dependencies it needs to be installed, it will take care of the
Dependencies, I don't know how it deals with that.
So let's take an example. I think I understand what you're trying to ask. The key thing to remember is chef knows how. It doesn't know what.
Yeah.
So you have to tell them.
How does it know how?
Because there's a lot of intelligence built into
Yeah.
chef.
I'll show you how. That part, how does chef know how? I'll show you that example. Just a minute. It doesn't know what you want. So you need to tell what you want. The outcome should look like, behave like, function like, right? So you define the outcome, it will do it for you. That's simple. Now let us, go inside and look at a cookbook. And a proper full cookbook, as opposed to this main cookbook, was very, very sparse. It had just a recipe called default, which did nothing much, like 2 things. Very, very sparse. That's a sparse cookbook invoking another cookbook, essentially. The other cookbook that we have here is a properly done community cookbook called Apache 2. And it has lots of things. The first question I would like to answer is to go look at how does chef know how to do it. So go look at default and go read. And it says, when the platform is RHEL or Fedora or SUSE, the service is called HTTPD. When it is Debian or Ubuntu, the service name is called Apache 2.
What file is this?
This is going to be a file called cookbooks Apache 2 recipe default.
It comes with this file.
When you say use the Apache cookbook from the community, that's what it does. It knows, okay, Apache, oh, you mean Apache? Oh, I know what you mean. You mean HTTPD.
So if you're deploying your custom app AB, you need to create this yourself.
Custom app, yes.
Okay.
For community cookbooks, use it.
Right.
If you log on to
Use it.
So if you're writing a community cookbook, you should think, okay,
you can follow
these are the
along.
different
Okay.
flavors of lyrics
So all he's doing is
So I
using
put
the
accordingly.
Right.
Genius.
Because the community's already created that stuff, so just use their stuff.
There's so much good stuff in
Yeah.
So
It's like Ruby gems, they're just awesome. All this stuff is
Mhm.
pre-built.
Microsoft is using chip.
Yes.
Then we can say I install
Yes.
best web services. Then we install IA.
Yes, WinRM.
We know.
Yeah, WinRM is supported. So, for those who do not know what WinRM is, especially you, because many people,
Me too.
yeah, many people in that company do not know what WinRM is. It is like SSH.
Yeah, remote management.
Yeah.
Gets you to PowerShell.
How come it's RM, man? RM means remove.
Remote monitoring or something?
Management.
Management, yeah.
Yeah, and if I do RM, I expect
I
RM
know.
minus RM.
And so you just said,
Because
Because
Microsoft
you
people
think
do not use
you're not thinking Microsoft.
Yeah.
You're thinking Unix, Linux.
Microsoft
That's not the
people
way to
use
think
Unix.
if you're perfect with
Yeah.
those guys.
so if you think like that, it is WinRM.
Yes, remove it altogether. RM win.
So these cookbooks are pretty smartly written, very nicely written actually. They're fairly elaborate. If you keep looking at them, they'll go in level of detail is amazing, and they keep themselves up to date through community efforts. So we can let's go and study how the cookbooks are done in real life. Let's focus on this Apache cookbook.
Are cookbooks kept in the same place like Ruby gems are? Or are they all over the
No,
place?
but the place defined is /cookbooks.
I mean on the web.
On the web, it goes
Like
here.
Ruby gems are all in like one place.
They are in GitHub.
They're on GitHub. Cool.
So here is where they sit. It's called community.opscode.com is the location.
You can find it on GitHub also.
Yeah, you can go to GitHub also, but this is a good place to go. Reason is as simple as, they'll give you GitHub links right here. So this is the Apache cookbook, updated as late as April 24. And they will give you the home page, which is a GitHub link. They'll describe it. They'll tell you how to use it. Give some examples. Right on this page, you will probably not find it any other place in all the details provided in one spot. This is a good place to go visit. And you can create a login and get notified if something changes. That is also a good option. Lots of people already participate. These are the participants that are contributing in some fashion. Followers. These are 299 followers. Do you see my picture here? Probably not. Probably because I'm hiding. I don't know. Or I'll just follow it. There you go. Followed. So now become 300 followers. No, I don't know my password. Okay, keep me logged in, log in. So now I'm a follower of the Apache cookbook, which means I can get notified on anytime anything changes to this cookbook, and I can, very rigorously keep track of what's going on in this particular cookbook. So we should also go and look at the actual GitHub location where this cookbook is stored. And if you look carefully here, you will have the same file we talked about just a minute ago. The default.rb again goes the same way, which is
he's getting used to the big.
No, so the problem is I got a damn tripod in the way now.
You got a tripod in the way?
Move slightly to the left, but
You have an infected this tripod is specifically for Mel, who is in the Mel is in the hospital.
Mel's son just got out of the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah, he was in the ER. Yeah, you can potentially say hi to Mel.
Well.
I'm not sure he's watching or not, but he said he will. And
I don't know. I can deal with the tripod for now. Right. So my question for you: I was reading through this recipe file, RD file, and I noticed it says 4 different types of versions of Linux, but it doesn't actually specifically say Ubuntu.
Mm-hmm.
So what is RATL for Red Hat and whatever else? What's the code for
Debian?
Debian is the code.
Okay, Debian.
It's based on Debian.
Okay.
So here are the examples: when Debian, when FreeBSD. So the three broad Starnix OS types.
So what about when it's Windows?
You don't Apache on Windows?
Yeah, it runs.
It works. Probably better than IIS, but.
Yeah, you can install Apache on Windows also. Maybe a different file, but yes, you can install.
Okay, that's the question.
So in the context of the exercise we did last time, I want to just quickly go over the key concepts before we jump on to a Chef server-based exercise. That's what I want to do next in the class, but I just want to make sure that I'm covering all the key concepts that we have in for Solo, and then jumping over to the server version also. I think we covered this last time. The client and server concepts. Okay, so here some of the key things that you need to understand. The terminology here are defined right here. They are links to the official documentation. So if you go there, the page was about client and server key concepts, and you can just read along through the documentation. But I don't want you to read right now. I'll tell you what the concept essentially is in a nutshell. The workstation in our context would become this. This is your workstation. Because you're primarily working through your workstation to orchestrate, manipulate, manage, do whatever you want.
It's your local machine.
Yes. And once you get familiarized with using Chef, the toolkit itself, it would be a great idea to switch over to your desktop, proper desktop, like your Mac, for example, or your Windows machines, for example. You can switch over and don't have to use the VM. Instead, use your laptop as your workstation. But don't jump right now. First, understand there are lots of this. When you run Chef, it will actually mess around with the machine thoroughly. So that's one of the reasons why we go inside the VM and do it there. First, we really understand what's going on.
Because it installs the Chef client?
Not because of that, but because of your actions. You don't know what you're doing, right, when you're learning. So you will go you'll go random, and you might end up destroying your machine. I don't want that to happen. So rather destroy the virtual machine instead of destroying your laptop. I don't want that to happen. So please remain contained, self-contained. Mess inside the VM. When you learn it, you go outside and play wherever you want. Only when you know what you're doing, you do whatever you're doing. Until then, let's play in the sandbox. So this is your workstation. That's the fundamental definition. Right now in the classroom, this VM, trustee, is your workstation. Next idea. Where is that? Here. Okay. The server. This concept of the server, when they say the server, it's kind of confusing. I'll tell you where it gets confusing. It gets confusing when people talk about, oh, it's on my server. They're talking about some EC2 machine. And they're absolutely right. That's what most people think of servers running in the cloud. They may be talking about their OpenStack instance in rack space. That may be running another server. That's what they may be thinking. But when Chef document says the server, it does not mean these guys. It means the ops code, Chef server. This server does not run your applications at all. It does nothing for you except store your configuration, store your instructions. What should your servers do when they run up, build up, destroy, whatever? What should they do? They look for instructions from the boss. This is the boss. In the Puppet example, they have a beautiful name. They call it Puppet and Puppet Master.
Mm-hmm.
A Puppet Master is the master, which is like the Chef server in concept, except that they have even better name for the process that runs. It's called Puppet Master D. And you know who has the Twitter handle? Puppet Master D, the founder of Puppet. That's even more beautiful, very nicely done. So Puppet Master D manages all the instances in your EC2, in your rack space, and you run Puppet as a orchestration mechanism for your infrastructure. Similar concept here. You have a Chef server running centrally somewhere. It can either be ops code managed hosting, that they will host your Chef server for you, or you can run your own open source Chef server, and then that becomes your own privately managed, controlled environment. That's just one Chef server. The role is to store your information about your infrastructure. Store your cookbook, store your configuration data, store your node data. It is not running your application. So that's clear, right? Server in the context of Chef is not running your apps. Your apps are running on EC2 or Rackspace or OpenStack or HP Cloud or God knows where. That's where your servers actually run. These machines will actually run the Chef client here, everywhere. They will run Chef client locally on every single box.
It's like the daemon runs on each of these servers.
Yes. Not a daemon-like, but you can run it like periodically, like cron job or at command in Windows.
I think basically when you want to deploy a package, you run the
Yeah, you invoke Chef client, and it'll know what to do, and it'll do the thing.
Chef client is not an installed package.
It is a package installed.
It's installed
It
package.
is installed package on each of the distributions.
So if the chef client is not working, that means that machine is not managed by the chef server.
That's right. So if your chef client is not working on any of these machines, say for here it doesn't run on this box, that means that box is not in your control. It can do whatever it wants. It's not in your chef control. You have to have the chef client running on that box.
But you can also have a chef server to have some kind of a routine check to go and check these lines are installed, not just push those lines.
You cannot go inside a server that doesn't want to talk to you.
That is true. So you need to have a separate process to monitor and push
Yeah.
the client.
Yeah, if this server doesn't want to talk to you, you can do nothing with it.
The chef client.
But you could from the error messages of, hey, I'm trying to talk to it.
That way you can infer.
Be something useful.
But you cannot dictate a server that is rogue. Right? It's gone. It's gone. It doesn't know who you are. It doesn't want to talk to you. You can do nothing about it except have another method of killing it or bringing it to order.
Yeah.
Something like that.
The chef client is constantly running.
Not constantly.
Or just one.
Whenever you want.
Oh, okay. Then, okay. So when the machine somehow got corrupted or whatever, there's no callback happen, or I mean, there
In
is.
that case, if there is,
There's not.
The answer was chef client runs whenever you want.
Okay.
Right? So if you want it to run on demand, then it will run on demand. If you want it to run every 30 minutes, then it will run every 30 minutes. Now, if the machine dies in the middle, then you know that after 30 minutes, if you don't get a call back, it is dead.
Mm-hmm.
You figure out something else, like a fallback plan, which is ignore the machine, create a new machine, put that in its place, or destroy that machine and bring a new machine up. You're done. If you set it to run on demand and the machine dies, then that's what you wanted, right? So it's gone. Then if it's gone, it's gone. Then you create a new machine on demand, and then you're done. Right? That's the process. There's nothing running all the time, but you can run it whenever you want. So that was the concept that we talked about in. Sorry, I'm. Yeah. So we talked about the server, and in the server definition is about the chef server, not your servers. The next aspect here is nodes, and these nodes are essentially your servers. So each of these boxes that you have in EC2 or Rackspace or HP Cloud or wherever you have, these are your nodes. They run chef client. Your virtual machine is also a node. You can run it on your Mac. You can run it on your Windows. These are also nodes. Anything that is under management of anything where chef client runs is a node. In very simple terms, there's a proper definition here that you can read, and we can go read about that briefly. A node is a physical, virtual, or cloud machine that is configured to be maintained by a client. So wherever a client runs, that's a node. Simple. Next idea, a cookbook. A cookbook is a folder structure, not one file, but a folder structure containing lots of things, like we saw the last time. I'm going to pull it up again. Yeah, this will have some cookbooks. So let's go look at some cookbooks examples. In this folder you saw, there is a folder called cookbooks, plural, like multiple cookbooks inside here. And let's go look at the MySQL cookbook. I'm going to expand the MySQL. I hope you can see it. It's too tiny for Mel to see anything. I'm sorry, Mel. I hope to fix this tiny problem by next week by bringing a different kind of machine that will let me project here.
Nilesh, how are you getting that folder view?
This folder view is a software Sublime Text. It is not installed by default on your VM because it is not a free product. You have to down. It is actually a free.
It is a free product.
Not in theory. In practice, yes, it is a free product. But I don't have the permissions to install it on your machine.
Okay.
So you have to install yourself. You're free to do it. It is actually a practically free product, but
You can't distribute it.
I cannot distribute it. Like the book, I could not give it to you. The first time we created a book in the class,
Yeah.
right? That book, you are supposed to do it yourself, but I cannot give it to you. Same way with this Sublime Text. It is free and available. I think sublimetext.com. So this folder contains the MySQL cookbook. If you just look at the focused MySQL cookbook itself, there are subfolders inside which called attributes, libraries, recipes, templates, with default folder and Windows folder underneath that, and some changelog, some metadata, which is data about the cookbook itself, another metadata in Ruby. The first one was in JSON, and some README files about the book itself.
Why are there multiple recipe files?
So let's look at
one.
So different they do different things. Let's look at recipe files. The default recipe is the first one you should look at, because that's the one that runs by default. If you don't specify something very clearly, like I want to run something like this. So look at line number 20, which calls out that please run the client recipe, meaning it will go and look for the recipe under client and then run this one. And this is the client recipe. Go back to default. In here, if you say like this, then it will go run the server recipe here. If you go back to client and default and say server underscore EC2, it is a specific specifically created for EC2. Don't know why they did that.
You're saying it's a framework, right? Because if it's not there, if you needed the Rackspace version of that.
Yeah, but you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to invoke it to yourself. All you do is, from a user's perspective, you don't actually invoke it like this. You say, I want you to install SQL Server or MySQL Server. So you say invoke MySQL Server like this. Like you take this line and add one more and say server. Then you're done. It doesn't matter. You don't have to tell it, hey, I'm on EC2, so please do the EC2 part. Do your job. It knows how to do it. You just tell what I want. I want client and server both on the machine. Here you go. You got it. You don't. Yes, go ahead.
So if you want Percona features, you got to add that separate.
How do you group the client nodes together? Okay, these client nodes that I want Apache to be installed, these client nodes I want MySQL to be installed.
Yes, very good question. That will become
for roles.
Yes, nodes and roles will be. That's where you define what this particular box will contain.
Okay.
Like, so you can define, hey, in this box,
that's a node.
You get the not in the cookbook level.
These are web servers. These are
Got
web servers.
Okay, got it.
Yes, sir.
As far as tools go, like you're saying MySQL client or server or what have you, you're not downloading that, to a local instance before doing installation, right? You're saying you're running that command, and then it knows to be able to pull that down.
Mm-hmm.
Simply, is it?
I think I understand your question. Let me repeat what you said so I can clearly get it.
Okay, just go back. I'll show you. So go back into Sublime Text.
Okay, Sublime.
And then right there, 20 and 21. When you put that in right there, does that recipe actually have to be local somewhere for that? Or is that going to go out running that? Will that go out and grab whatever you're asking for? Does that make sense?
Yes. So the cookbooks in a typical setup would actually sit on the chef server.
Gotcha.
This is where all your cookbooks will sit. You actually say knife cookbook upload, and then you push your cookbooks away from your workstation onto your chef server.
So nothing but a configuration.
Yeah, it's your place for you to store centrally somewhere away from you. So even if your laptop is down or sleeping, machines will still work. So you push all your cookbooks away and store it there. These are my specifically designed cookbooks. Don't go to the community and get a cookbook from there, because I want you to use my cookbooks. Remember, everybody, that's the instruction, right, for all the clients. The instruction is always get the cookbook from here, not any random place on the internet. You can get it from GitHub, but that's not what I want.
I think he's asking about
Right.
installation bits.
He's asking about where did this file come from onto the client.
What do you mean, where does it get MySQL from?
Yeah, no, actually,
So I'll go step by step, and I think I can answer this. I'm not done answering.
Okay.
So the cookbook goes here. Now your chef client runs on your node. Now when the chef client first time runs, the thing it does is, okay, who's the server? It's this guy. So please give me whatever I need to do. Tell me what I do. And so it tells me, hey, you look like you are the node meant for MySQL. So I want you to be running these two commands, the default command we had, which happens to be 20 and 21. So the instruction set will include, please get the MySQL cookbook. So the MySQL cookbook itself will come down here. And this cookbook will then run locally on that node. When it runs, it will follow along something like this. It'll say, okay, I want to run the default one first, which happens to be, include recipe, the client one, and followed by that, do the server one. So it will go and look at the client recipe and run this segment, and then it will go look at the server version and run this segment and say that I'm done. And then the default will say, I'm done client, I'm done setting up server, and it completes. Now, when it actually sets up a client piece of software or a server piece of software, let's see what goes on there at that level. So when the cookbook is running here on this location, this particular cookbook, the client version, see what's going on inside here. Look at the client and look at the platform. If it is Mac OS, use Homebrew. If it is Windows, look at whether the package actually exists first. So first it checks whether it's already installed. Otherwise, you don't want to install twice. So it does that. What in the concept is called idempotency, which is remember to remind me to talk about idempotency next. I will do that in just a minute. Let's talk about a familiar thing. What it is doing here is installing the components needed for Ruby. In here, I think the server version will probably give more examples exactly what's getting installed. Debian. Yes. So this thing, when the cookbook is running, this guy is actually installing the client binaries and the server binaries one after the other by bringing it down from your apt repository for Ubuntu or your yum repository for Red Hat. And at that moment, one of these tools will be used to install the client or the server on this node through the cookbook run that happens to be running at this line. First the client and then the server. So that's the sequence of flow of binaries as it happens. So first the files will go to server. Anytime you want to make a change in your cookbook, you push them to the chef server, like we mentioned. So cookbooks change, they go to chef server. Nodes come in nodes come into life. A new machine comes into life, that becomes a node. You install chef client here, and then you run it. And when you run it, Then it goes and asks the server, what do I want to get from you? And then it gives you the cookbook. The cookbook then runs here. And then according to what the cookbook says, it will grab through apt or through yum or through an MSI install or other types of installs, will bring whatever the cookbook wants it to get and install it on this node to make it ready. That's the flow of binaries. Is that clear?
Great answer. Thank you.
Cool. The keyword I mentioned, I'm going to spell it for you, and I'm sure you know this already. Idempotency. You can spell it the way you like. But if you know this term already, raise your hand. Awesome. It is like multiplying by 1. You take 32. Multiply by 1. What's the result? 32. The result is going to be the same no matter what you do. Multiply by 1 will give you the same exact result. That's the concept of idempotency. It's a mathematical term. Give me another example of idempotency. Mathematical. Simple example.
+1.
No.
Plus 0.
Plus 0.
0.
Divide by 1. Yes. Yeah. Plus 0. Divide by 1. Minus 0. Right. These are all simple examples. Is this an idempotent function?
Yes.
Huh?
No. Is this the
Square root of an
Yes.
imaginary number for the
4
second, I don't even know.
2
Yeah.
times 2
2 divided
is
by 2
4.
is 1. Anything raised to 1 is 1.
Yes, this is idempotent. Now let us look at this. Is this idempotent?
0.
No.
It is not,
1.
because it has a plus and minus deviation. Right? So we can go math if you want, but I'm not going there. Not many people seem to be interested.
This isn't a math class.
Now, I almost sense some repulsion. No, don't do that. Okay, I'm not doing it. So idempotency in the context of Chef, that's what we want to talk about. The concept goes something like this, that you do some operation one time or first time, something happens. You know what exactly happens, and that's what will happen. Do the same operation again another time on top of the first time. The outcome will be the same, exactly what you wanted. Do it another time, one more, and keep doing. The outcome will be exactly the same. That's the idea behind Chef's idempotency. You keep doing over and over. Now, I will now describe an example of an.
I don't want to bust your chops too much, but you could say the same thing about Word. You know, Word, you open Word up, and each time it's going to open up the same, right? So that's true, right? Isn't any application follow that same rule?
Yes.
And,
Yes, in the context.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to, like, so.
So what's
So
special about
yes,
it?
Yeah,
exactly.
so
What is
special.
special about it? That's what I'm going to show you now.
Okay.
So opening an app is going to be exactly the same every time you do it, and if it is not, it's a buggy app, right? Is it buggy? Not necessarily. It may be a design like that. So I'll give you the other example. Open Facebook. Every single time you see something different. You open the same Facebook again and again. Why is it different every time? Is that buggy? Not really. It's a feature. So that you want it like that, right? You open Twitter feed. You open Twitter every time you get something new. That's by design. In case of a simple flow of logic that you will typically do when people are learning how to script, will do something that will have an operation. Let's say you want to save a file structure, create like this. I want to have a file structure called test, and under that I have a file called 1.txt. That's a file structure I want. So I'll write a script that does this exactly. I'm going to be deliberately novice and write it the novice way. I'll say cd test and say mkdir1.txt.
That's a tensor of that folder. Under Teams.
Sorry. Really novice. Okay.
You're saying novice?
Novice.
Nervous.
Novice.
Oh.
I thought, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said, okay.
Accent problem. So, so this is a novice way of writing a script, very novice. Now what happens is, it does not do certain things that are expected to be done. For example, this touch will create the file, but you made a mistake here, you did not do cd. So let's add a cd now. Okay. Now you made a mistake. For example, something went wrong in the system and the folder got deleted. If you create this file mkdir/test over an existing folder, it will create an error message saying it already exists. So if you forget the -p option, it will silently create or ignore if there's nothing else. You don't want to run into that error. In another case, if you repeat such kind of scripts over and over without checking for existing conditions, like pre-existing conditions, for example, you have this particular file created and you want to make sure that it goes and sits inside the test folder. Are you validating whether the test folder actually exists? That validation is missing in the script here. You're saying that cd/test, but you don't even know whether the command succeeds or not. The success verification has not been done by the rudimentary novice script writer. That problem is very likely to happen when something go wrong and you want to run a long sequence of steps. And I'll give you a slightly more complex example of installing. Let's say what Dan wants to do is set up WordPress on a cloud instance. So you start doing some instance and create a machine, set up your LAMP stack, and you download WordPress.org. WordPress.zip file from the website called WordPress.org, and you unzip it. When you say unzip that particular file, it will create a WordPress folder with lots of things. And then you by work on it, you make some modifications, and you run a script again that will download the WordPress.zip and unzip it again on top of this. Is that a clean idea? Is that going to produce exactly the same result every time you run it? No. You're not doing any verification of what was there before and after. And those are the cases where you run into a problem, what a novice will do when you're not checking and validating what will actually happen if you run a particular script that you write over and over. The classic operations for IT will have a long, very difficult to manage and maintain scripts that some of you are familiar with, that you might already have, that are not repeatable. Right? If you run it once, if it works, it works. If it did not work, you have to start from scratch all over again, which is the complexity you want to avoid. You want to make it repeatable. That's what idempotency helps you in doing that. If it is a simple opening a Word document, it will open every single time, no big deal. But if it is a long script of steps that you want to be done on a machine in the cloud, and then you intermediately go and make modifications, and you run the script over and over on top of the existing setup, you still expect that it will behave just like you wanted it to. That may not be true. It depends on how diligently you wrote the script, and that becomes a burden on you. And like I said in the beginning, it is about what that you tell, not how you do it. So it takes the burden away from you as to how you will actually implement, how you will write the script. You don't have to. Chef will do it for you. You just tell, I want the outcome to be, I want it to run Apache. It will do it for you. You don't have to configure a script that shows how exactly to install Apache on this or that OS, and you make changes, it will correct them for you also, because it knows how. And the burden is taken away from you, and the benefit is provided to you by letting you dictate what you want, and Chef will have a deterministic, idempotent way of accomplishing your outcome.
And is that ultimately, why it's so special or why it's such a good thing? Chef, Buffett, whatever, pick your tool, is that it's really giving a lot more reliability. You can count on it to accomplish that functionality, I guess.
The key value that I see is this.
Right.
Anything that is repeatable in your life, you routinize it and you codify it and you make it in your books, so that in the middle of the night somebody wakes you up, you know exactly how to do it because you have it well documented and repeatable, and you just blindly press a button and it just happens because you are doing it twice, and that's enough for me. It's an item for routinizing.
So it's automation.
It's automation. And this is a learning that you will find in a reference in this book I mentioned, The Goal. In The Goal, you will read about routinizing the repeatable. And I'm drawing these extracts for you because it helps you in putting things in perspective from a business perspective of operations management. And like I said, that book is actually pretty darn useful. So if you have time, absolutely read it, even if you have to read it 100 times to finally get to the end. But please do. Yes.
When you say you don't need to worry about the how, you're assuming you can find a cookbook out there. It's something that does not exist out there.
True.
You still have to define your own how.
Yes. Yes.
But you can also, but you also
can
can use the skeleton of another one, so that helps.
So when you write cookbook, if you are writing your own cookbook, you should write the cookbook such that they become repeatably runnable over and over on top of each other every run. Yes.
So we have a scenario for application installation using Chef. What we do is the same application, people do multiple modifications throughout the day.
See, that's the problem. Exactly. Yes. Keep going. Keep going.
We do that throughout the day. The application is called Kibas. It's built on top of the Apache Plume architecture.
What's it called? Spelling?
KI. This is the internal code name. KIVAS. I don't know what that means, but it is built on top of Apache Plume infrastructure for real-time data streaming. So what we do is, developers continue to make a change multiple times a day for bug fixes and enhancements and things like that. There's an apt-get repository in the lab, and the application name is called Kibas in the Ubuntu operating system. We develop it in the lab environment. There's apt-get repository there. It gets replicated to a production apt-get repository. We open up a firewall, it gets replicated. And then there's a checkbook, cookbook, continue to give a couple of hours and run the same command, apt-get keywords. Then you continue to push. If you are making a change, it goes to your lab. Once it passes the test, it gets replicated in the production repository, and then Chef cookbook goes and grabs the latest packages and continue to install.
Yeah. So this is actually a very good way of implementing. What you seem to have done is you have packaged your own app and provided to your Ubuntu servers through your own implementation of an apt-get that you get to install on your machines. It is specifically for you, so nobody else can access that app repository. And what apt is doing for you is, when you have a rerun of an apt-get install of Kibas, it'll basically update the entire package just like your developer wanted it to. And so anytime you run apt-get, it doesn't matter. It take care of the outcome that the original developer of Kibas wanted.
Yep.
And if you update the package, the new package comes along and takes place of the old package
Right.
in a well-defined, documented way. as opposed to somebody manually modifying something, right?
Yeah.
You don't want that
We have
on a system wide.
30, 40 servers there for the keywords application,
Huh.
and it will be manually tedious to deploy 5 times a day
Impossible.
across 40 servers.
It's humanly impossible, right? You want to make some changes like this. It's a great idea you just showed, which is provide an app package and give it to everybody through a push of a git commit, or that maybe goes through a chef run, essentially. Beautifully done. That's how it should be done.
And the problem with in our environment is we don't have this machine outbound internet connection. So we have to download all the packages. For
Locally.
example, if you want Ruby or Java or Python, everything you can download and keep it in the repository. Because these machines cannot go out.
Cannot access outside internet. So you have a proxy, a local proxy, caching everything else that you want. Whatever gets installed in your nodes, you want them. Let's say you want to. If the node says I want to get Apache, you would not go to the Apache app repository maintained by Ubuntu, but instead use the Expedia repository, local. And so don't even go out the internet. Go here. That becomes a proxy. And that becomes also a more tightly controlled environment, because even if you say use Apache, it actually uses your Apache as opposed to the other Apache, the real Apache. You control that very nicely, which is awesome. That's one of the areas where you can actually streamline your way of thinking about what's. So at a moment's notice, you should know exactly what's going on in your infrastructure. On all the machines that you have, give us the app exactly running the same version of 2 hours ago on all the machines. You can get that reported in your environment nicely.
Another use case we have for Expedia is we have about 30 to 40 different consumers using a common platform, Hadoop platform. And there is a client node component it's like a gateway to the big data platform. And it's got pre-installed components like Perl, Python, Java versions, and all the kits required to manage the Hadoop, develop Hadoop, etc. But people often go and mess around with the local client boxes. So what we did is we just have all the packages in the check repository, checkbook works, and continue to enforce the same bits again and again. And if people mess up the local client machine, because each one of them has got their own machine, each group has got their own machine. And if they mess up with that, and then they come back to us and say, hey, my client machine is not working, then it just push it from the Jeff repository. It goes and runs the same exact bits it's supposed to be.
But when they change it, because they're working on something new, but if you kind of rerun the client, then that wipe out their change.
No, it's not about the application bit. It's about the core Hadoop bits it's supposed to have on each machine.
Okay.
So if you are creating a new map-reduce job, we don't care. You do whatever you want, but don't touch Perl versions or Python or configuration to how to connect to Hadoop or SSL keys. The SSH keys. Don't touch any of them. If you touch it, then we push it from the top.
Right.
So the role here is defined very clearly, right? You have to define the role between a user of the application that they are providing versus the role of an administrator of the infrastructure. You have, like he describes, Hadoop deploy, and you need Hadoop machines to be able to interoperate with or talk to another machines. So you need keys predefined by the IT organization. Now, if a user is mucking around with the keys and modifying them, that's a problem, first of all. And even if it's a problem, let's ignore that. If it gets refreshed, the keys will get overwritten with new set of keys that IT will dictate, which is exactly what you want, because you don't want the user to manipulate the keys to begin with.
Yeah.
And if the user changes the keys, that's actually a user's problem. Probably he's doing it by design, or by very well-intentioned design. Nothing wrong with it, but he's doing it. And so if he loses that change for a key, that's okay. As long as the map-reduce job that he puts in the infrastructure does not get lost, your business impact is nothing. You bring the user back to normal with a push of your fresh chef run. Your machine is back, your user is back to business, and their MapReduce jobs or any other job they may be running on the infrastructure are still exactly the same state that they were to begin with. Because chef runs are not interacting with the data usage. They're interacting with the infrastructure part. Right?
I have a question regarding how, with respect to the background, last week we talked about the background for standardization of the developer's machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can Chef work, replace the background function by having each developer has got one developer VM or a machine on the cloud, and Chef manages the configuration of what each developer is supposed to have?
Mm-hmm. Do you envision developers working directly on a machine away from them?
No, yeah, it is possible because it depends on what kind of a machine each one has got, right? In future, we were thinking about having the entire application stack on the laptop. I don't know whether the laptops are powered enough to go with the entire application stack. You can create the bits and pieces of the application stack on the machine. If you want to create the entire stack, I don't think the laptops can go.
So if the laptop is too small for hosting the entire infrastructure application stack, in that case, a good use case would be to create in the cloud, create one developer environment exactly the way you want.
Okay.
And the creation of that should be automated.
Yeah.
Test it. And then anytime a new developer comes along, you want a machine, here. Run a chef operation and spin out a new instance, load it up with the exactly identical environment using tools like Vagrant. And Vagrant can run chef. Vagrant, when you say Vagrant up, it can invoke chef. If you define, like in your case, in your example, you have a setup.sh something, right? So that is a script you wrote. You essentially wrote that. Short script, install something. If you read Vagrant documentation, you can ask Vagrant up to invoke a chef run.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then when Vagrant up goes up, it will start the machine. And then, oh, I need to run chef now? Fine, I'll run chef. And then it will run chef right on that machine itself.
So why would you do that? If you already use chef to standardize your environment, I mean, Vagrant virtually does the same thing. Why would you do that twice?
Yeah.
I'll get to Vagrant part later. I think you need to use Vagrant one more time yourself before you distinguish between what Vagrant is doing and what chef is doing.
I think I have a quick answer. I may be wrong, English, you can correct it. In Vagrant, you need to configure how to install.
Nothing, so what?
Like run the packages.
But you need to define exactly.
You need to say apt-get,
Yeah, you need to define it, right? Versus if you want to bypass that and you want Chef to take care of that intelligence, just use Vagrant with Chef.
Okay.
So Vagrant will let you use Ruby or Shell or Chef or Puppet or Ansible or Salt or a bunch of the plugins available now. And you can use these tool sets to manage Vagrant itself, a machine that gets created. Vagrant essentially is, in its first instance, it was, nowadays it is much bigger. In its first incarnation, it was a Ruby wrapper around VirtualBox. So Vagrant was VirtualBox, nothing more. It was a box. It is still called Vagrant Box, even today. The names are Vagrant boxes for a variety of boxes that you have. It is a box as opposed to a tool. Chef is a tool that will install or configure it for you. Puppet is a tool exactly the similar things. Shell scripts can be doing exactly what you want, depending on what you write in the script. But these are procedures of how to do things as opposed to a machine. Vagrant is a box. Think of it as VirtualBox.
Right. I see. So Vagrant basically bring up a OS environment
Yes.
of your choosing.
Yes.
Then Chef run a whole bunch of
You can use Chef, you can use whatever you want.
add-ons.
But Vagrant is a box. It's not a procedure. It's a box. And you can use
The procedure part, like you said, can be either then Chef or whatever your own setup shell.
Right. Yeah. Depends on the complexity. If you have a complex set of applications needs to be installed along with the Vagrant, where to go with Chef is the right formulation. If you have a smaller, like our use case, we just install Apache. Maybe
you don't need Chef. Yeah, you can just setup.sh, that was good enough.
Yeah.
You don't need Chef, but when I show a Vagrant example, I'll actually incorporate Chef in there just to show that it is possible. It will
So
be heavily.
Vagrant same as AMI.
No,
No?
it is local right here. It's not in the cloud.
Okay.
But it uses the AMI. If you can let
Yes.
already AMI to download that.
Yes.
No.
You can specify, I need this AMI as my background image in my local desktop.
Oh, okay. Oh.
You can bring AMI's local and run it here.
Mm-hmm.
You can also, I think, do the other way, which is to use Vagrant to manage a remote machine. Though that's also possible, it seems. I haven't read on it, but though that also is also possible to manage a cloud machine through Vagrant. But we are not talking about Vagrant right now. Let's get back.
Yeah, I have a formula. Randomize the repeatable squared.
Randomize the repeatable.
It used to be so simple, just OSs, now it's.
Hey, let me clarify. It was not randomized. It was routinized. Don't. I got confused.
And then ask me,
I thought you
does
were
it
joking or
equal one?
something.
Does it increment? I'm just teasing.
No, I thought it was a joke, but no, please remember it is routinized. Say it one more time. Routinized, not randomized. Somebody will kill you for that.
Did I say randomized?
You did.
Yeah.
I thought it was a joke.
Oh, it's late in the day.
Wow, routinized. That was funny. Okay, so we talked about nodes. We also talked briefly about cookbooks. We looked at structure. Let's go inside and look at some of the attributes here. So attributes for a server. You can define what port you want to run, what address, and whether it will be nice or not. There's a nice flag. Here in client, there are some attributes such as
I don't understand the difference between templates and attributes.
yes, let's look at templates also. So for every operating system, like Debian, for example, expects this type of layout in a specific file created. And I'll maybe...
templates are creating a file.
Yes, the templates are creating a file.
Which one?
Any file.
Like MySQL.cnf file, for example.
Uh-huh.
Configuration files, my grants of grant commands run, the grant permissions to create drop,
Oh, okay.
shutdown process file. And so these are templates. You create files based on the templates that you have here. So my.cnf is generated by Chef. Like this file can become your etc MySQL my.cnf, right? So in a cloud machine where you have used Chef to install MySQL, let's see if I can pull up an example and see what it is running. And there is my.cnf. And see, it was generated. Okay, this file was generated by Chef for the server called BE. And see what it says. It says port number should be 3306. And that's an attribute, by the way. Socket should be this. And in safe mode, it should be this. And nice should be 0. So that's the configuration defined. And this file got auto-generated because the machine itself was brought up to life using Chef. So that's incarnation of the template.
Mm-hmm.
Let's also look at the attribute corresponding to the same idea, which is you have the MySQL.cnf. This guy will get the attributes from this file. Where is 3306? Not this file, some other file. There's another set of cookbooks here. It's getting from here. Yeah. So it's getting from here, this location. So all the attributes are going and being passed over from this. So the 3306 should be here. Yeah. Here. So here is where I specify the MySQL port should be 3306. And this value gets picked up from this location and passed along in the attributes, transmitted to the template file my.cnf, and embedded into this location in the port variable. So node MySQL port will be showing up when you go and look at that file. The path would be etc MySQL, and the file will be vi my.cnf. And this is the file that shows up. So you get the concept of what attribute is and how it translates to a template to construct a file that gets loaded on the machine when you run chef. So a MySQL install of MySQL on a machine in the cloud that was not done by hand will have a my.cnf file looking something like this. And it automatically gets created in the right location because you told it so. You know, this recipe says so. Do it like that. It basically says create the file and use these attribute values in the file, put them in the template, place it in the right location, come back and tell me you did. So I'm done installing MySQL. Right? Looks like you have some questions, Shahul.
Yeah, so these templates will be used as part of the installation or post-installation?
Both. Post-installation, what will happen is it will look for if there are any changes. If somebody by design modifies 3306 to 3307, like you mess around with it, like we destroyed Apache last time, right? This guy will go and check, what do you have, 3306 or not? It is not 3306, let me fix it for you.
Okay.
It will make 3306 and push it.
Got it.
And it probably also mimics the complexity of your environment, like how your network's set up. If you're doing a lot of segmentation, you know, some of these configs are going to be set up with different port assignments, some of them over with different port assignments. So it's going to reflect, again, the complexity of what you're doing. Yeah.
Yes, it.
So you have a cookbook as MySQL, and then you have recipes, bunch of recipes under the cookbook.
Like these ones?
Yeah, like you have Ruby and a bunch of them. And what happens, like you have multiple cookbooks for the same node, and then would there be a conflict of application version or something like that? Because MySQL uses Ruby a certain version, and then you have another application that uses Ruby another version.
So this is not installing Ruby, but a Ruby connector to MySQL.
Okay. But if the Ruby is not installed in this case, right? Will Chef install Ruby as well? No. You have to install it. So it will tell the
It will tell you that it did not find Ruby. You need to install Ruby.
Got it.
So what type of thing will go into attribute versus?
So attribute, an example was 3306, port number, like you saw here.
Templates are for creating actual files on the new server that you're creating.
And then attribute has the value that will go into the.
Well, not necessarily the new file, but like when you're installing, say, you know, which directory you want it to be installed in, and what port should it run on, and you know, things. If you were installing a GUI, you would click next on, or it would ask you a question, that kind of stuff.
So all these are attributes defined. Like, where should let's read one by one. Let me make it a little smaller so you can see it in picture, one screen.
That's actually a good good thing though, in terms of what you're saying. Like if you do a SQL install by GUI, and like you say, you're clicking the buttons,
Yeah.
it's basically doing the exact
Yes,
same thing
exactly,
behind the scene.
exactly.
Yeah,
Except
And if you go to a Windows SQL install and you look at the config file, you're looking at essentially this.
You used to have to create your own separate little run files, little text files with all the answer file. That you would then, that was the automation. This is just another form of that automation. Much better form of that automation.
Yeah. So this is exactly analogous to what she just described, which is when you click next, there are some default values populated. You can manually override them, right? Install it in C:/blah, and you can manually override it to be not blah, but something very specific for you. So that's an attribute that you can specify in your attributes folder for a particular cookbook. Like here, MySQL server attributes I defined, and MySQL PHP attributes I defined. And then in PHP FPM, I define another bunch of attributes here.
What's your attribute under site cookbooks, and then also attribute over in that individual cookbooks?
I will tell you exactly why do I have two folders called cookbooks. One is called cookbooks and the other is called site cookbooks. The cookbooks folder is where community cookbooks, publicly contributed cookbooks belong, and I don't edit them, I don't touch them. But I want to make some changes. So how do I keep them while not making any changes, but I still want to change them? So that concept is called override. It's very common in Ruby. And so I create another folder called site cookbooks, this folder. And underneath that, the structure is very, very similar, except it's almost incomplete. You look at the MySQL cookbook in the proper form is pretty large. I have attributes, libraries, recipes, this and that, and everything. All these are inside the MySQL folder in the MySQL cookbook. If you look at the sites cookbook, the MySQL folder contains one folder which contains one file. That's it. All other files, I want to use what the public community cookbook provides, except for this particular file, use my version. Because this is where I'm going to specify my attributes. And my attributes, I want it to be exactly what I have written down here. These are the values I chose. That overrides the value of what the community thinks the value should be.
So basically, you're copying that file and then just change, say, three different things in there.
Exactly. So you can do a diff. Let's do a diff.
Just like if you were installing with the GUI, you don't usually have to go in and do Chippy Advanced and play with everything. You just have to change the one thing you need to change. Or click all the defaults.
So I think in the InnoDB logs, InnoDB pool size, somewhere one of these values I changed. I needed to make it different from what everybody else wants. InnoDB buffer pool size. I think these values I changed manually. But let's go compare what these values are in the community file. This is my private copy of the site cookbook folder. Let's compare these same InnoDB buffer pool size values. It is 1 and 4 and 8. In this, we have see the numbers are different. So I don't even remember when I did this, but apparently I wanted to change the buffer pool size or some other size. So I made that modification by copying over the existing publicly provided attribute file into the same location that we now have here in the same layout structure, except I copied only one file and made only those changes here. Most of it is almost same. If you do a diff, you'll find some values changing. So when the chef runs for this particular repository, it will grab and override my values on top of what the community thinks they should be. Right? So that was about attributes. We have resources and providers. anything like a file can be a resource. A provider is essentially how to deal with that resource. Like, what do I do with the resource? Is what a provider is. You write a sequence of steps to do with the resource to make use of. And we'll take some examples. There is an action called nothing. So you can do a nothing action on a file and it will do that action. Nothing action. So this is for completeness, they'll add the nothing action.
So a provider isn't.
It's an action on a resource.
Okay.
In very simple terms. So apt package becomes a resource. Batch can be a resource. There are huge amount of documentation behind every one of these. And so I don't expect you to read the entire documentation every single time you sit here. But remember that there is documentation and it is eloquent, beautifully written. The server is provided by HP, I hear. This documentation server is graciously donated by HP.
That means Heather doesn't like it. I'm just teasing.
It's hardware. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So I think companies do sponsor them for being open source, and it's a nice thing. So you can read all day long this extensive documentation, and it's very nicely done. But don't expect to read it all overnight. It's huge. Now, having said, let's get back to what we were discussing, which is not this one. Here.
So what's an example? You said there's a nothing attribute and all that stuff.
I think let's get to an example, because describing doesn't help.
Okay.
It is complex. So let's get to an example that will illustrate the point. The last item we have on that list is knife command, which is something that you should look at, and I'll give you a quick demo so you get a perspective of what that knife thing is. So a knife is a command. Let me get to the right screen so I can actually start a quick demo for you. This is my terminal. Okay, here. My back terminal will be easier to demonstrate because it's already prepared with my keys. So this is a command as simple as knife EC2 server list. Please list me all the servers I have in my EC2. It did. I have nothing. Knife Google server list. Give me all the Google server, all the servers I have in my Google Compute Engine. Nothing.
Where do you define that?
I'll tell you exactly. That's a very very logical question, and that's the next answer. Knife.
It's just magic.
DigitalOcean.
How managed?
Droplet list. Even the API is branded. Look at the branding.
Wow. Droplet.
I found out my former CEO is Andreessen Horowitz. They're funding DigitalOcean.
Okay. So yes, there is a instance running in DigitalOcean in San Francisco zone, and it's the one that is giving me trouble right now because my site is still down apparently. But I haven't had. I think let me first stand up myself before I.
It's still down.
It is still down.
Yeah,
And it's not your fault. It's theirs.
It is probably my fault also. Yeah,
You need to do your boot or something.
I don't know. I haven't even had a chance to look at it.
Gotcha.
Because of coughing and unable to stand properly and all that. So I'm focusing on you first, then the website, because there's nobody audience there. Right? I'm not worry about it right now.
Says they're still experiencing a network outage.
Yeah, maybe it is related. They're claiming that they are suffering, and me too, figuratively.
Why are they suffering?
Says they have slow event processing, resulting. Let's say, read more. They didn't really say why.
I haven't even had a chance to interact with them, but this is what's going on. 6:25, 7 in UTC. And today is what, 6:25? Yes.
They basically just say we're slow, and that's a problem. They don't really tell you
Yeah,
why.
they don't tell you what's going on. Something is going on, but and who's impacted? Why am I impacted? Is it me? Is it them? So we'll eventually play finger pointing and figure out what's going on. But back to knife. Where was knife? Here.
So knife is basically, it's like a directory search, but it's happening at a host or node level. It's a search of what resources you have, right?
Knife is more than search. Knife is a tool. It's a proper tool to interoperate with cloud instances. Knife.
It's an API. It's an app that knows that has integration to the APIs of cloud services, so you can run API commands on clouds.
But is it just restricted to
Any
the
cloud, any command you can run on a cloud.
You
can run through
Anything that is managed through Chef.
Has the APIs.
You
It
can
integrates.
use knife
Yeah.
to manage
Has the
the
API.
command line.
Amazon,
Okay.
Google, DigitalOcean, other.
can use knife for cookbooks.
Okay.
Now, to instant gratification, like how do I use knife myself? Instant gratification is very easy, and I will enable that right now. Go to your VM like this, and you will find it in a specific location. And answer Shaul's question. It is in this location. You will find a .chef folder. You see that? This folder, .chef. And let's go inside there and see what it's inside. There's a file here called knife.rb. So open it up and change this. Wherever it says change this, change it.
your passkeys.
And then if you do,
your SSH keys.
Yeah. So this is where you put
and
your
then you
stuff.
may need to enable it on the other side too.
Nothing.
API calls don't need to be enabled.
They're already enabled.
But how does it know what is my AWS machine name?
It'll find out for you, tell you the name.
You just said, give me the list. And then it'll give you the list, and then just like it's interacting with, if you were using a CLI to communicate, communicate with AWS, it's the same thing.
So it
just
uses
using
my
the API.
certificate, and you'll go and see, using my certificate,
Yeah.
what are the machines I have?
Yeah.
This is my ID.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
So go and do it. Put your keys in the right place. Uncomment the line.
I don't see the chef folder.
Chef. It is.
You haven't played with anything on here, so it's,
It is .chef.
oh, so it's one of those.
Where's
Can't
your
see it.
Google one? Or is that just for?
Now Google one I have not even set up in
I
VM.
don't have any Amazon machines, AWS.
So it will come out with a blank result.
That's totally not what I did. Cool. I was playing with some, like it was Twitter or something, you had to go and enable the API for Twitter in order to talk to their API
And create a
in
key.
your account.
And then bring the key here and then.
Right,
interact
the
with
key
it.
thing I got, but I was like,
Yeah, you're enabled to
but yeah, there's
enable
certain things I
Facebook.
couldn't, like Wikipedia is open, you don't have to do any permissions, but like,
In
I
here,
played
I
with
think.
Box and with Twitter, and they both had to enable their API here.
Yes. APIs are not enabled by default in many services that are consumer based. But in cloud services, they assume that you're a developer. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So they'll enable APIs for you. You can disable them for certain cases if you don't want it to be open.
What is the difference between Capistrano and Chef? I know they can be used collaboratively, but what is Capistrano best for?
Capistrano is best for deploying Rails application.
Rails apps.
And Chef or Puppet is for managing your infrastructure.
Gotcha.
Capistrano will be primarily focused on deploying under /var/www/some HTML/some application. And you create your versions and it will deploy in that exact location through Capistrano. Whereas what Chef and Puppet will do is you deal with your infrastructural problems at a machine level.
So, English,
Mm-hmm.
how does Chef works in conjunction with AutoScale?
So you have to look at a simple principle here is like this. I'll take a diagramming tool and talk about what is known as control system. You're probably familiar with this already. In textbooks, you define something like this.
Yeah, I
Right?
remember that 20 years.
20 years ago, you remember this.
What is that supposed to be?
This is that maybe is that an Indian representation or what?
No, it is a circuit.
Of what?
It's a circuit, isn't it?
It's a circuit. It's a feedback mechanism. It's control systems design.
Yeah, control.
I majored in history.
Okay.
I didn't take any of those classes.
Maybe I
Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity.
Yeah,
Okay.
Newton's
So the idea is,
Just memorize and regurgitate things, actually.
so let me make it simple, super simple. The idea here is like this. This is, by the way, in class. This is also known as operational amplifier. In some same concept.
Yeah.
Op amp. To be precise, operational amplifier.
Does it seem like and or not?
Yeah.
Not yet?
Same concept.
Yeah, okay.
Same concept. This is analog circuit though.
Yeah.
This is not
Digital signal.
not digital. So
Yeah.
no and or NAND nor nothing.
Yeah.
Pure analog. Okay. Let me say. Let even not even talk about the drawing. I think it was okay. Look at this. Now look at me. Because if I keep the drawing in my face, I'll talk. 30 from 30 years ago when I used to learn these things. So erase that. If I want to take this pen and I want to throw it in that basket right there. So how do I make sure that I throw this accurately and it falls right there? Because I'm not the basketball person.
You need an arc.
I need a machine to throw it,
Oh,
right? And I need to know the angle of attack so it exactly lands in the container. And I need to know how much thrust I put. Because I'm not capable of actually throwing it correctly in there. So I need to know what angle do I send it at and what thrust do I push it. What other metrics do I need to know and tell my machine so that it exactly lands in the container?
wind speed.
Wind speed, beautiful. Yes. What else do I need to know to make sure that it correctly every single time?
Gravity.
Gravity.
Maybe you're not on, or you're in Denver.
Yes. Yeah, in
Might be
Denver,
slightly different.
Denver, Colorado, different gravity. Beautiful. That's awesome. Now, if you're applying some thrust and the thrust is small, what do you do to understand that it was small?
Yes.
Because it falls right here as opposed to reaching there, right? So the thrust apparently was small. So what do? You understand and measure how far from the target it actually fell. And then it tells you that, hey, your thrust was too little. A little bit, add some more. Add some more. And then the pen goes all the way to the board. What happened here? You pushed way too much. So you bring the pen again and reduce your thrust again. And this is an iterative process. This process is called, that was the electronic representation of the diagram I tried to draw. Essentially what it is doing is adjusting your thrust level and the angle and making sure that the object will actually reach the target. and in an iterative fashion. So answering your question about auto scaling and chef, how does it come into play? You look at measurements. How far the object is flying into the bucket, away from the bucket, or is it too close or too far away from it? And based on that metric, you adjust your thrust. Similarly, you go to something like CloudWatch and monitor your application's performance and find out how poorly or how badly occupied your RAM is, how much CPU is being consumed, and what the right number should be so that your performance of the end users or your end users of your application is good. And if that is not good, what will solve it? Is it applying more thrust? Is it changing the angle of attack? Is it adding more servers? Is it adding more RAMs? Is it adding more RAM meaning making the machine bigger? Or is it adding more machines horizontally scaling it? That factor will decide what action you should be doing. And so auto scaling essentially is tied back to measuring how you're doing and applying principles in your control to dictate the behavior you want, so that the measurement that you will then see will be exactly what you want to see for your users.
But when you just say auto scale web layers or middle layer or caching layer based on the capacity, chip should know, hey, there are 5 more machines have been added, and I need to apply the cookbooks and recipes and make it alive and add to the balancer. How would it know that I got 5 machines to work on?
So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 running, and you see that the load on these machines in CloudWatch, for example, or some other monitoring method that you might have deployed. Using those metrics, you will find that the machines that you have, the metrics are indicating that they are fully busy. And you look at your inbound network traffic, and you see that that is steadily growing. Based on those parameters, you can then dictate that I want my machines to be at 80% full, not 100% full. So whenever it is reaching, like say 85, I need to start adding more machines to reduce the load on each one of them, spread it out. So if I want to say on 4 fully occupied machines, I have a load of 400%. I add 1 more machine to it, my load gets distributed, each one of them become 80 across 5, and I meet my goal. Because my goal was to keep my machines 80% occupied as opposed to 100%. 100% occupied machines are never a good idea. You cannot scale, you cannot breathe. You want to leave some breathing room in your machines. So if my goal is 80% occupied for the CPU, and if I see that it is growing and going 85, I'll add 1 more server, and that invocation needs to happen automatically. Meaning at that moment, when you get a notification that your CloudWatch is telling you that your resource consumption is approaching 85% on 1, 2, 3, and 4, all these machines, it is time to take some action, which is add 1 more, 5, and spread. So that automation has to be done by hand. Somebody has to do it. I think in one of the Amazon applications, they'll do it for you.
Yeah. But you still want to manage the 5th machine. I need to install Apache, I need to install Perl, Python. But Chef needs to know I have another 5th machine to be managed, right? How do you do that?
So when you identify a machine to be added, you assume that it is of the same role. So you give it a role.
Say add new
role. Add this role to that machine. So you give it the web server role, and it will configure exactly as one of these guys. And all you need to do next is to update your load balancer and tell this guy that, hey, there's 1 more. And also let the connection happen to the database side. That this guy can also access the database. And then you're okay.
The question, as far as configuring that, would you, so auto scale can kick off a script.
Yeah.
So it could kick off a script and say, build a server of this role, use this image or this AMI. and then Autoscale can also tell the load balancer about it.
Okay. So you can use Autoscaler to invoke a script.
Yeah, Autoscale, because what you think about, if you go back to what Autoscale is, it's a CloudWatch thing. So a CloudWatch thing's based on a trigger of anything you can measure, including CPU usage, etc. You can kick off X. X can be a script. X can be part of Autoscale. X can kicks off a trigger. And so Autoscale would be add a server. Here's how to add the server to kick off the script.
Okay, so you can use the script to install a check client on the equipped machine, assign a role, and then
Let's run the check script. The check script would then say, hey, have the Autoscaler create a new machine, and then and once that's booted, kick off a check script for that machine.
You cannot do that, right? Because you cannot have this machine is not identified as a client on a chip server.
You have to put the client on first, or the client is in the AMI.
In the AMI, or you can bootstrap the whole client itself.
Yeah.
You can take a raw AMI, Ubuntu AMI, or any other AMI that has nothing. You're not even Chef. You bootstrap that through knife bootstrap command. So there is a command called knife ec2 server create something like that.
What it does?
It creates a server.
You're just running an AWS again. That's all you're doing.
Oh, through Chef.
Yeah.
Through Knife.
Which
is a plugin. Which is what?
Knife ec2.
What is officially Knife? It's an app of Chef.
It's a plugin.
It's a plugin for Chef.
Knife ec2.
So I create a VM. I create a new server using Chef. So auto-scaling can invoke the knife command, which can.
Well, first you're actually creating a new server through Amazon.
Yeah.
Because autoscale says kick off another server. So you said kick off a server with this AMI or this image. So it goes, loads a medium up, and you can have that then be bootstrapped. Have the bootstrap command in there, and then it goes to its bootstrap server, gets all the stuff that's supposed to be the client, contacts Chef, gets all it's supposed to do. Check out the go under CloudWatch on AWS and just check out the Autoscale, the creation of it, and it'll probably make more sense.
So Autoscale does not assume that the user is using Chef.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you are using Chef, you need to understand what they assume.
Yeah.
So by default, it's going to ask what's your AMI and what size server and that kind of thing.
Got it.
But you can also do other pieces with that.
So hypothetical situation with all these pieces working together. Let's say you have an app and it's the Super Bowl and you're having a high load, higher than expected or whatever. All of these pieces working together, you can actually scale to handle your load.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of how it's
exactly. That's what Autoscale in AWS what it meant to do. And likewise, you would create a trigger. You create a trigger for scaling up, and you create a trigger for scaling down, because there's no reason to have, if you have all these empty servers with no CPU activity on them, you don't want to keep those running for no reason. So likewise, you can say if there's no activity or there's only this level of activity for 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is, your thing, then you can start killing those extras. Super Bowl's over, nobody cares, whatever.
Or it's the
so you can do that like on a daily basis, like maybe just when your users are in the office, or maybe you have peak users in Europe and in Japan, or hey, an article's coming out about you, you might be big, you don't know. So having that configured by default always when you're in an environment is always a good thing.
Right. Or what you were saying before about Zynga and the game that was released.
Right, Zynga's game got released, they put on Autoscale. But generally if you're doing like Amazon, actually got humans involved with that one, because there was wait, how many servers do you need? What's going on? And when there's a big event like Super Bowl or
product release or this or that.
Well, I'm talking like global, like with the World Cup, like a lot of companies had World Cup related big website launches then, or when with Super Bowl, same thing. So Amazon will actually talk to all of the salespeople and say, hey, do you have any customers that are doing big launches with Super Bowl? They'll get a whole bunch of extra servers, but they just want to make sure they're communicating with the customers too. If it's just your launch, it's not the big deal, but if you have 50 people doing launches a day, it can get kind of crazy.
So the auto scale is automated, but you need to manually bootstrap once the machine.
No manual stuff.
I mean the instance.
It depends on what you're trying to do. If you have if your AMI has all the things you've built, you've already pre-built Apache on there and all these things, and that's your
Chef client.
if
Yes.
you want that.
Yeah, if you're
In
using
your AMI, then just tell AutoScale to boot that image.
take my AMI, run it, bring it up, notify my load balancer, notify my database, and we're done.
Right, so which
That can all
part,
be in the AMI.
like the new instance notifying load balancer
That's
is
part of autoscaling. It's part of the feature that Amazon offers with AutoScale.
I'm trying to, because the automation, certain parts done in the chef part, the recipe, certain parts done in the autos.
Right. So the simple way to think about it like this, as I said, AutoScale does not assume that you are using Chef.
Okay.
So if you're using AutoScale as automation method, you're golden. Go ahead and use it. It is not a Chef thing. However, if you want to incorporate Chef in there, then you need to understand what exactly they're doing.
Yeah.
And then incorporate Chef elements wherever you feel appropriate. In practice, what it will come down to, if you're using Chef, would be that you have your own AMI that already has Chef preloaded.
Right.
And it just gets running. When it gets running, you have Chef running and you're taken care of.
But when the new instance got spin up by AutoScale, say have the Chef client preloaded, does the Chef server still need to trigger?
The Chef server does not trigger anything.
I thought you said
Client pulls it. Client pulls it. Server does nothing.
Oh.
Server does nothing except
Client server doesn't. So when you run Chef client, so for on demand.
client is on demand, it will pull whatever it needs from the Chef server.
When it's turned on, it will talk to the Chef server.
If you have Chef server running, it will do nothing for you. You need to
just
run
listens.
client everywhere you want Chef to run, and then it will grab whatever it needs from the server and run it. Chef server, you can run like 10,000, manage 10,000 nodes through one server, small server, easy. Because there's no workload there. Not much workload there.
It's basically one big, I'm assuming it's one big repository of config.
Yes.
Right? And so we're just talking about a whole bunch of either XML or something.
JSON. Yeah, Ruby in JSON. Yes.
Do people have redundancy around that? Like if one goes down, do you want to have another one running in
another Chef server?
Yeah. For, like if one goes offline.
In such businesses that need that level of redundancy will actually use hosted Chef because they have willingness to pay. They have money.
Chef means Opscode runs it.
Right, yeah.
Hosted Chef as in the service that they provide, so it's easier to just use the hosted because they'll manage redundancy for you. Otherwise, now you are managing redundancy in two Chef servers, and which is the main, which is the secondary, and that's a hassle.
What happened to the era of people being really fearful about, outside entities knowing what kind of environment you're running and your architecture and stuff? You know what I mean? It's like that. I'm from the era where you didn't reveal very much about yourself at all, and now it's kind of gone the other direction. It just seems like how protected is that? Or is someone running analytics against, knowing what my environment is, and that information is being vended or sold? And
it may be very much possible. I don't deny that, but the way to circumvent and get away from that problem is to encrypt.
Yeah.
So it seems that, am I logging in? Waiting and not.
I think with the advent of open software, especially just the environment that you're running on, it's less of a deal. I think people are there's less of the, no matter what you do, they can still figure out what your environment is.
Right.
So there's to some degree there's less of the, and really it's going to be a Windows environment or a Linux environment. So it's not.
I guess ultimately the concern is vulnerability in some way or another,
Oh, sure.
Like the Department of the Defense. They're not going to let anybody know what they're running, behind anything, right? And so corporations doing a similar kind of thing, just being mindful about what is known about their IT infrastructure.
That stuff's so easy to find out nowadays, though. I mean, you just need, as a person who sells to those folks, one of the ways we would try to dig up information and see who used, we're releasing, SAP, we got SAP certified. So we wanted to find out what enterprises were using SAP, besides the ones that were featured on the SAP website. So we searched blogs searched forums for people asking SAP questions, and then looked at their email addresses. And it would say, .McKesson or whatever, and so you'd see where these people are from. Everyone's running the same standard set of things. Yeah. No one's really running terribly obscure stuff. We're all running stuff by Microsoft, by Oracle, by SAP, by all these megacorps, as well as of course little things. But
look at this. You can get an account here created for free and get at least one crush report for any company of your choosing, and they'll give you insights as to what machines, infrastructure, setup, whatever that particular machine, that particular company is using in their business. This is useful information for salespeople. And some companies have corporate access to this database. I don't have, so I cannot show you. What I have is probably just like what you have. So create an account and pick your company. So this is another way of what people who do not find information about what project to do. The recommended idea is to look at a crush report for a company that may be of your interest, understand what infrastructure they have, and put together as a classroom case study exercise, a potential example to work on for that particular given customer. And you can get a crush report as a sample free trial. They'll probably give you at least one. Yeah, no obligation, risk-free trial. So grab a free trial report for you. Do some research, pick your company if you want, and read about that company from here.
Yeah.
But as far as vulnerability, as far as either people bringing you down or leaking of your code, that type of thing, encryption is going to be your best bet, combined with other security things, just to keep others out, kind of thing. But if you're hosted, say, at Amazon, and you receive a DDoS attack while you're on Amazon, well, you've got an entire team of people who are used to spotting and thwarting DDoS attacks on your side. So Amazon customers, that'll happen periodically, and they don't block them by default because sometimes it's actually like a major customer launch. Nobody told us. It's a feature, not a DDoS. But they're they can easily handle that type of issue. So there's some level of security that you can't get if you're just totally running things in-house and trying to deal with everything yourself.
As opposed to you're on DigitalOcean and some slow event processing going on and you don't know what's going on and they won't even tell you. Right? So the slow event processing is, my site is down. I don't even know whether it is related or not. I have no clue. But whatever.
It might just be short-staffed.
Well, you should use knife and do.
Yeah, only if my foot gets proper first.
Yes.
So encryption, in ops code, they will use public key infrastructure. Like here you see the example. I'm logged into my own ops code account, the managed hosted chef. And this is the public key. I have the private key for this somewhere in my machine. And so I can interoperate with this on a secured protocol. So I'm assuming that people who will host their servers with ops code in this company will trust them. That's a fundamental assumption. If you would not even use a service with somebody if you don't trust them. You use Gmail because you trust Google to begin with. Otherwise, you are not going to use Gmail. That's a fundamental assumption. Same concept here. You're using ops code as a chef server for your organization. You inherently agree that you trust ops code. And then nothing wrong with that assumption. Nothing wrong with trusting them either. But just be aware that they're different from you. They're not you. That's how I look at it. And on top, you keep your keys secure and private, and trust that there is no hole in the encryption algorithm. You're golden. At least until this Heartbleed came out, that was supposed to be secure. Now it is secure again, but we don't know what we don't know, right? That's the part of security.
Especially when the NSA introduces things that are insecure.
We do not know what we do not know, so that's the kind of a Then if you're that paranoid, you don't even go to the cloud. Just stay home.
When I went to install software at the NSA, I was allowed to go to one of their data centers and install on their unclassified network. And they had to walk in front of me in the building saying, uncleared, uncleared, uncleared. So everyone could stop talking and and hide their screens or whatever if that was a classified thing. And then they let me to the data center and they turned on a flashing light. One of those signal lights, because they can't yell uncleared in the data center when it's so loud. So they know that with the light that somebody uncleared is in the data center. And then they let me on, or they showed me the computer that was the unclassified network computer. And so I, put software in and stuff. And I was allowed to do the install, but when they had to type a password in, just the default password for my SQL, I knew they were going to change the second I got out of the building. I had to actually turn around and walk down one of the rows. So there was all the machine noise and stuff, so I couldn't even hear them typing. And then they said, okay, great, thanks for installing. Now we know how to install it ourselves. We'll take this and install this on our other networks.
Amazing. I have had never the opportunity to walk into a secure environment like this in this country. But I think
State Department,
it is
NSA,
similar.
JICPAC, Joint Intelligence Center of the Pacific, DoD, Treasury. That was, I almost got kicked out of the Treasury because they ran a security scan on the software I was in, because the computer that they gave me to install, they had it not connected to the network. Install, so they run the security scan before even hooking it up to the network. And they called and they said, we're not hooking your computer up to the network. You would put Easter eggs or something in your system. And we specifically had a rule about no Easter eggs in the code and everything. And they're like, we found the word assassination in your code. And the Treasury is the same people that prior to Homeland Security, they did the Secret Service. So they don't like hearing the word assassination.
No.
And turned out it was actually not in our code whatsoever, but was in the Windows, whatever they gave us, message of the day dictionary that was assassination is the highest form of flattery or something, and it was like a Benjamin Franklin quote. So their security people couldn't distinguish between the Windows code and our code for some reason.
Nice.
And yeah.
Yes, sir.
Reading something about Amazon AWS Ops work. It looks like that's
Ops work is Chef.
Is an integration of Chef
Yes.
into AWS.
I haven't played with it, so I didn't know much about it.
It's, I think, old version of Chef.
Oh, you mentioned that.
Yeah. Somewhere I mentioned. Right?
Yeah, last class.
It works. It is Chef.
3 versions of Chef, it says.
So they provide a Chef server for you? Is that right? Or?
Let's log in and find out.
It says 9, 11.4, and 11.10 now.
Oh, 11.10 also. Nice.
Yep, as of March 2014. And that runs with Ruby 2.0.
Very nice.
Let's see. Getting started.
So let's see what we're talking about was ops works.
Yeah.
So what they do here, open it up, pick a region, and now here you add some stack. Like I have a WordPress stack here, for example. I'm going to delete that. Yes, delete. And here, add your first stack. You can give it a name. In fact, the way to look about is you first define a stack here, then add your structure and add layers. So here you can define the top level EL load balancer, middle tier, bottom level data tier, and you define and deploy your apps, and then you manage your entire stack. That's the idea, and they have it configured like that. So it is a easy to use version of Chef. Think of it that way. That's pre-configured to use. There are lots of cookbooks already defined, and you can just let's go to that.
It's also part of the AWS CLI, which is part of the API, so you could actually call OpsWorks through Knife.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's say add a stack. I'm going to add a stack here. Created a new IAM role for me. Now I'm going to add a first layer. I'm going to say I need Rails server, or HA proxy, or maybe static web server. On the back end, I want MySQL database. So whatever layers I want, I can just keep adding. Add layer. It added. Now I'll go add one more layer. Add Rails. Add layer. Add one more. Add MySQL. Add layer. Now I can add instances in these layers. So I can add one more instance. But I think I'm digressing now. The key idea is you see these layers added up together and layered in form of a layer cake in your environment. And you can quickly define what you want. So now if I want to run Rails, that's what May is very interestingly looking at, because this is what you can actually do, is create your Rails application environment right here like this. And if you don't want MySQL, delete that and add more back. Yeah, add your layer containing your where is your RDS? No, you want Mongo, right? What do you want at the back end?
Yeah.
Mongo. Mongo is not here in the short list, but in theory it is possible to have a layer created that drops down like this, and you select your custom maybe here and give it a name. We call it a Mongo layer, and then you have a layer created. In these you have your Job-fully entire architecture defined like this. You keep adding instances here. Add one HA proxy, add multiple Rails servers, add one big Mongo database at the back, and then you have a complete layout defined. You bootstrap the whole architecture, and depending on what your recipes that you have defined, these are the recipes already preloaded for you to run Rails.
It looks like the stacks that run Chef 0.9 or 11 use Chef Solo, and Chef 11.10 uses Chef Client.
And so in here, if you want to see what HA proxy recipes are being used, here are them. All these recipes to set up, configure, deploy, shut down. So lots of work that they have already done, so you don't have to do it. And all of it is free. I mean, they don't charge extra.
Click on one of those OpsWorks things, the initial setup or gateway of configure client or something.
Yeah, everything is free. They use only you pay for the machine. Yeah.
Yeah. If I click on one of those, will it show me the actual command, the actual files?
In where?
The other down below. Opsware that.
Yeah.
Click on that. Click on that.
Yeah. We'll go to the Git
Nice.
repository.
So I can.
And by the way, this.
use Opsware. Yeah.
By the way, this is going to the AWS Git repository, not the community version.
Yeah.
So the cookbooks here are OpsWorks cookbooks, not Ops Code cookbooks.
Yeah.
That's to remember.
Is it managed by Chef server, or is it all Chef Solo?
Managed by Amazon.
But Amazon has got a Chef server. They take care of that for your environment.
Let's read that. I think I don't exactly know what.
I was trying to find that and I'm not.
I'll get back to you on that. Depends on whether which version you're using, is the solo version or a client version. If you're using a client-based version, you need a server somewhere. So did you complete that step, or are we still talking about it? This step you're trying to run knife on your own? Did we not do it yet?
Well, I might put in my
I left my cell phone at home.
Oh, you cannot log in.
Very sad thing.
Oh, that's great.
The same, I have to carry my iPad to log into.
Wow. Craziness.
Just increase over.
It's
And
telling
then
me.
making it more secure will make it more difficult.
If your cell phone's out of charge.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. That can happen indeed. But for those of you who have access to your AWS keys, put it right here. Change this and give it a shot. See how it works.
Remove the hash command from the front.
Yeah, uncomment. Yeah, comment card. Oh, you did not do that?
So I was wondering why it's not taking.
But did it work after that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I even changed the region.
Yeah, you
Give
can.
the region option
Yes.
in the command.
Yes. Where is that defined? In the help
No, it's
command?
not defined here. You have to define like the knife EC2 serverless -- region and then give the region.
Yep.
Otherwise, it goes to the default region.
Which is Virginia. Is it for you?
Yeah. So
Wait.
Virginia.
Where do you have to specify region?
You don't have to specify. It just goes to default.
Oh, I see.
If you
Oh,
want
if
to,
it's not the
if you want to
default.
go to a specific region,
Oh, okay.
then you say US.
And the way you find that out is going to your documentation, docs.opscode.com, and here you search. And you search for what? Knife, region.
Knife
You might need to
EC2
put
server.
AWS region,
Yeah.
Just give EC2 region.
EC2 region, right?
There, dash region. There it is.
Looks like there's 11 different clouds supported,
And if you
Lots
don't
of
want to
them.
do the
and one's like OpenStack, so
Just
there's a lot of
give,
things.
Yep.
knife EC2 server.
I've never heard of Linode.
Android is a VPC, like your
It's just a VPC.
DigitalOcean.
It looked like it was the SSD cloud hosting.
It used to be a VPC. They've grown.
Not anymore. They changed their business.
Lightning Quick SSD server for $10 a month, as opposed to DigitalOcean, which is you can be down for $5 a month.
And then Blue Box was another one.
That's
I know
local.
that's a new one.
That's where she hosts.
Yeah.
That's OpenStack. Blue boxes.
So what does it say? Unable to load the gem.
Okay. That
Oh,
means that UnfGem came because of a warning, right?
No, she is.
Warning.
It's a warning. It shows me that you have an older version of Trusty, because I fixed that in the recent version.
Okay.
The way you can fix it is like this: gem install unf.
Oh. It's a Unicode normalization form wrapper library. So there.
Interesting name.
Slash, yep.
Yes.
She gave it in Mac. Where did you do that command?
On the command line in Trusty.
And you got
You have the latest Trusty, so you don't need to worry about.
What's
Does
interesting,
it give you-
gems all go to they're all from the same place.
So
They're
you-
all stored in the same place in the web, so you don't have to tell it where it's stored. You just say gem install and then the name of the gem, and it knows where to go. Ruby knows where to go.
So you can say gem list, and you can find out what gems you have. These are
You can't
locally
do that
installed.
remotely though.
Yeah, locally installed. Yeah. So here you have gem unf already.
And text.
Yes. It's even easier to say. How about this one?
Yaju.
Wasabi.
That's wasabi.
Wasabi.
Oh, okay. Here, Y-A-J-L. Ruby C bindings to the excellent Yaji JSON stream-based parser library.
Sweet.
I have discovered how close parser libraries are.
So after you complete this part, I would like to make sure that you did. And if you are running into a own issue, you can override that by installing it or getting a new version of Trusty from him. He already has a copy right there.
No, that's the new, the
Unpgem, I knew it will come up as a warning. It still doesn't matter, but it's a warning. So I suppress that by installing it to shut it up. Did you get through, Michael? All golden?
Yeah.
So let's now discuss the other subtle aspects about, where do you put the knife file? We have placed it inside our .chef folder. And there are multiple places you can put that same file. And I'll give you two examples in which where I have. So one of the locations I have, I call it, first I'll go in the home folder, which is CD, enter. And here if I say knife is DigitalOcean droplet list, it'll get me something, whatever I have. And it says, yeah, I have this. Wonderful. Now let me go to a specific folder and run the same command.
It's not going to work.
It will work, but say nothing.
But what?
But say nothing.
So you want to put it in your path.
Yes, so this thing has to have a specific location. It goes and looks at the local location, like right here. What do I have? So if you look at this location, I have a specific .chip folder underneath here, like this. And a different knife RB file.
Why is that?
Because you can.
Because he's crazy.
No, the point I'm trying to illustrate is that there are multiple levels to which you can go looking for my knife.rb file.
So the one that
the first one it goes looks for is right there, right wherever you are. If there is a .chef folder, take it. If not, go higher up. Find a .chef. Go higher up. Find a .chef, and then take it. So it goes hierarchically up and goes and looks for .chef folder and then looks for the knife.rb file. So this knife.rb file is different from the other knife.rb file. The other one is a global one, meaning it is placed at.
Got it.
And it may not have your keys, and so it.
The global one is.
Why does he just say I don't have keys instead of saying?
Where does it say I don't have keys?
No, why doesn't it say I don't have keys instead of saying I don't have any servers?
Because there is a key which
the
has
local one, but not in the global one.
In the global one, there is a key also, and there's a different account just for demonstration in the class.
Okay.
I have.
So if it complains, so if I didn't have a key in there, it would complain and say I don't have a key.
Yes.
Okay.
So the two locations, the global one is this, and then if you're working here, it becomes that. So mostly I work in this number 5, this location is where I mostly work on. But when I'm doing some exercises in the class or something else to demonstrate a point, I create a subfolder, work inside that, and then work here. Like I'm currently working in a folder called chef repo. And that, in my machine, as a demonstration, what I'm doing is a different set of keys, different from what I have in the global file. So I'll now open my knife.rb in the subfolder. And you will find that it has, where is the DigitalOcean? Yeah. So it is the testing version of DigitalOcean account. I have two accounts one is called testing, the other is called production. The production is blacked out, commented out. The testing version of DigitalOcean is active here. And if you look at that particular file, it will be the opposite. And that's why you see what you see here, which is if you are inside inside this folder, which is this one, and you run the knife command, you see that it contains nothing in the testing account. It came with an empty result because it actually authenticated correctly and found that there are no servers, and it tells me that there are no servers. If I go one step above, I'm exiting out from that repository. Now I am back in my home, and I'm running the same command again. And now it is using my production keys. So it will grab the actual server that's supposed to be misbehaving. So that was the concept of where you put the file is important. In addition to that file, there are two more files that you will look for, and I'll go quickly to that location also. Let me go there in the demonstration exercise. And in here, you have the folder I'm looking at is this. So in a subfolder, which is what I'll be using in the exercise in the classroom, in that folder, I have 3 files.
2 keys. And
There are 2 keys, and one is the configuration detail, knife.rb. And I need you to create these 3 files. Yes.
You gonna do the exercise tonight?
We may not have time, but I think we can do parts of it. I wanted to do the exercise that I am about to begin, but I don't think we have enough time for that. It's a fairly elaborate exercise. What we can do today is, first thing, I'm going to repeat that. Please make a snapshot of your machine so you can come back to it anytime you want. You will want to come back to it again and again. And by the way, as you generate these keys, you want to take one more snapshot. And as you change the knife.rb and save your AWS keys, you want to take one more snapshot. You can take multiple snapshots after snapshots after
isn't there a
snapshots.
problem when we create keys, though, because we get the Cloud Genius keys, not our email keys?
True. You need to, if you have a keys in something in your machine, in your VM, you should not have this folder, by the way. If you have it, delete it. Let me check. In our latest version of Trusty, you should not even have the keys and folders and nothing. You have nothing?
Oh, that's right. That's right. We avoided those. We got rid of those.
You deleted that. If not, get a new Trusty and it will not have anything. So
I don't want to see this. Never mind.
Huh?
Brain. Good.
Okay. So there is no folder called chef repo in. There it is not. Yeah. There is no .chef folder. There is a folder, but with nothing in it. Yeah, there is no keys. Only knife.rb. And the knife.rb is just for example.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of taking snapshots, just reiterating that in terms of how I would like you to use snapshots, you can take snapshots of live running machines, if you did not know. And it will bring that running state back. As opposed to the snapshot that you take first time, it is a sleeping shutdown machine. So when you restore to that particular snapshot, which was shut down, the machine will start in shutdown mode. What does that mean? Nothing. Start in shutdown mode. Basically, it means that you need to start it. Yeah, boot. It will need to be booted from beginning, from scratch. Now, in snapshots, you can create one like I have, and one more, like now.
So say, can we carry the snapshot to another machine and restore it?
No, not another machine.
So
Another what?
Like this laptop doesn't belong to me. So tomorrow if I give the laptop back.
Okay, that's a unique first world problem you're telling me about. Yeah, bring your laptop to the class, the one that works.
No, this one works.
You think?
Yeah, Hyper-V removed after that.
You removed Hyper-V and it works now?
Yeah.
So that was the problem.
I don't know. I believe that was the problem because it didn't give me any problem after that.
Nice.
What happened after Hyper-V, there were some patches I applied.
Huh.
After that, the problem started. Because initially it was with Hyper-V and it was working.
First day, Shahul also had the same problem. Similar problem in that he was running parallels and trying to boot up VirtualBox.
IP conflict.
IP conflict.
I don't know. It's better.
Better.
Whatever.
The performance on that snapshot's pretty quick right now. It's like 10 seconds.
Yes.
It's not much has changed.
Right.
Yep. It just changes whatever, it just stores whatever is changed. And so you change a key and you take a snapshot, it keeps the key for you. And the reason it is important to take snapshots is because you want to make mistakes and you want to come back to them, come back to a good state, and without having to worry about getting your keys again and again. Now, having said that, let's go there to the place where we can actually set up our own keys and everything. That step is fairly simple. I'll do it here for you, with you.
And this is one of the lessons?
Yes, it is one of the lessons.
Bootstrap a node?
I think, let me open up that lesson itself. It will be, should be the node lesson. Nah. Using Chef Server. That should be it. This should be the lesson. We'll go in the next time, but essentially what we're doing right now is maybe up to 3. Step number 1, 2, and 3. That's pretty much what we can, I think, do. Which is golden state. Begin from golden state. You know, if you have something else done up until now, begin from the original trustee I give you. Begin from that point is critical. If you have something else done to the machine, roll back. If you have made any changes whatsoever, please get a trustee. He has it.
Well, all I did was get rid of those keys a while ago, so that's a good thing.
It's a good thing, but make sure you have a copy of your snapshot.
I just did a snapshot.
Snapshot. Great. Then make sure you're entirely working within the sandbox and open this site, which is basically manage.opscode.com/starterkit. And here, I'll open up a bigger link for you. manage.opscode.com/starterkit.
Starter dash.
Is it?
Right.
Yes. And here you need to create an account also, I think.
Yep. Otherwise, it won't give you your pen.
Yeah.
First, create your account, so that will generate the pen files.
Do inside the VM. Where is my VM? There.
It's chilly, right?
It is.
Okay, so I thought I'm sick.
No, we're all freezing. It's a feature.
What's the temperature?
62.
There's a thermometer right there. You can make it warmer.
Yes. If you can move and make it warmer. It's just 70.
Make it
But I'm cold.
It goes up to 73.
Woo.
I'm cold. Okay. So I'm assuming you have an account and you have downloaded something. That thing you will get only once. Don't lose it.
To create an organization.
No, we'll get it more than once.
The key will change.
No.
You may
We
get it
can always say regenerate the keys.
Regeneration. The
Yeah,
same
so-
key will be gone.
from the
You can.
AppScope.
Yeah.
We get key from AppScope.
You get a organizational PEM. You get a personal PEM.
Oh, so I do need to create an organization.
Yes, you will create an organization for you. You can create multiple organizations within your business. Like you can have a operations department or a product development department or marketing department. I don't know why would marketing use OpsCode, but they can. The idea is to routinize their presentations.
Not randomized, but
Not
routinized.
Routinize their presentations repeatedly.
I don't think that's a word.
What? Routinize?
Routine nice.
Routinize is a word.
Routinized.
Yeah.
Routinized.
Of course it is a word.
Yeah, it's all right.
I have a Nobel laureate professor tell me this word.
Routinize.
Scrutinize. It's a word.
It's the IZE that's throwing you off, right? The
See, it's a word.
Or it's actually an adverb.
It says, do you mean scrutinize? Because scrutinize is kind of weird.
I know. Scrutinize is the proper word.
Routinizable.
Yes. And Nobel laureate professor.
I used to work for Nobel laureate.
The guy taught me operations management. And he made me suffer through that book.
Oh, was that the guy, the author?
No, not the author.
Oh, different.
But different professor
Yeah.
who used that book in the class to teach me operations on my head. Hammered me thoroughly. Only 16 years ago. But I still remember him. And I remember his word. And it is a proper word. Make something into a matter of routine. Subject to a routine.
There's another word for that.
Well, this is the word I like. This is the only word I know. How about that?
What's the synonyms?
Synonym.
Oh, excuse me.
There are no synonyms here. How can it be? English is such a language, it will always have at least one synonym.
Do you want us to move the chef repo to our desktop? Is that what we're trying to do?
Let me see what you're seeing because I cannot see. Can you show me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you project?
Yeah.
Quick question for
We don't
you.
have the
Yes.
air thing. It's not showing.
No, here.
That redirect is acting funky because I'm getting a 404. This is not the web page, so it's clicking on the link to get to
What page
the
are you trying to go
site.
to?
Well, the first link that
Just go to manage.opscode.com/starter.kit.
Dash kit.
Starter.kit. Dash kit.
Let me come over.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm good.
oh, that's fine.
So the key,
You don't want to get sick now.
You actually sound like you're doing better. Are you feeling any better?
No, not really. The reason I'm sounding better is because my drugs are acting up, which is nice.
Are you saying better living through science?
Oh yeah.
Better living through yoga is what's going on in my home. Like you told me about tea and honey, the hot tea and honey thing.
Is that working for
Yes,
you?
that does. In fact, we have
Whiskey and honey looks better.
Oh.
That's Irish.
Or bourbon and honey. Go Kentucky.
But tea and honey is helpful.
Yeah, tea, honey, then add some ginger
Ginger.
or vapor. Just breathe vapor, hot vapor.
What's the remedy back home in, what's a Hindi remedy for that kind of
This is
Sore
it.
throat.
So this is it. I just told you, ginger and water and tea, and
No, but back home, is
Yeah.
that prevalent?
it's very common.
It's amazing how worldwide, the indigenous cultures have similar remedies,
Yes.
regardless of where you're at.
I think the best remedies are like these are in China, and then probably in India. They are ancient countries, right? They have accumulated wisdom that they don't share. They're probably undocumented, not properly documented in medicine.net. That you can read about amoxicillin all day long, but not about your green tea and honey.
Yeah, capitalism. Huh?
So let me define the purpose of the three files that we have. The three files we got were org, pem,
We're
personal.
supposed to download a key from them?
These pem files are keys.
I have a PEM file.
Yeah, that's exactly a key is.
This
Yes.
is from like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Huh?
I opened an account 3 years ago.
You still have the pem
I
file?
have the PEM file.
You use it then.
But I need another PEM file.
No. You need an organizational PEM.
Right.
So I have already have the organization some created long back. How do I go and get the key from?
key for an organization. Let's go how to reset that. So go to the organizations, manage organizations page.
Yep.
Somewhere there you click on the organization.
Oh, okay.
And then you click the triangle and say reset.
Got it.
Or you can just create a separate organization just for the class. If you have a properly, if you have a proper account, don't mess with your organization. Create a new organization,
okay,
and use that organization for the class.
Mm.
You don't want to be messing. If you have a proper account, don't use that account.
Mm.
In here, you will also find a cheat sheet somewhere. That cheat sheet is a reference to do rudimentary stuff using knife. So the first one is, okay, what's the server? What server am I running? Knife EC2 server list. Delete a server you don't need anymore. Delete the node. So once you have a chef server configured with your knife.rb file, you should be able to operate using these commands right away. And we'll do those exercises when we meet next time.
Just to verify, we're downloading the starter kit, right? And then
yeah, the starter kit will essentially get you this. Let me open up the starter kit. Where is the starter kit? It is probably it. So this is what you get when you download a starter kit. You get a folder. You get these 3 files inside a chef folder. You get cookbooks with probably starter in it. You get a node with nothing in it, roles with nothing in it, a starter role, and that's pretty much it. That's what you get as you begin. Is that right?
once it comes in the form of a zip and you launch that.
Yeah, you unzip it.
Yeah.
Put it inside your home and rename it chef-repo if it's a different name. What is it called? What's the name was when you unzip? Chef-repo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so use that name, put that chef-repo folder.
So I'm running that install.sh command.
Install what? Right.
Direction number, set up your workstation.
Set up your
Run the chef installer. That after you unzip.
I think, okay, hold on. You're proceeding forward. Yeah. Can you can you project now?
Nope. There's no error thing.
No thing. What's going on?
Oh wait, hold on. Let me get on. I think I'm on. Nope.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm on LA. I'm on LA.
Oh, you need to come to Cloud Genius to project.
I just takes my VM out to get.
Nilesh, do you have a is there a step-by-step guide on?
No, not for now. It'll be available next time when we meet.
So I did.
So no, you're not doing these steps. No, hold on. Roll back. Don't go. That will take you to what ops code wants you to do, which is not what we are doing.
Okay.
You're
So
keeping it a whole lot
I did
simpler.
1 through 3.
Good. Stop there.
Okay.
You're done for today. Because all of the steps of the install, the curl and install on the other screen you have, the browser. Open the other browser, please. Get this segment. Set up your workstation segment is already done for you. The curl step that you have is already taken care of for you.
All right. I'll write
Is it part of the
Image. Trusty has it. So who's doing this? Kill it. And by the way, go back. Point in time snapshot. Kill it and go back to point in time.
Suspended it. Well, whatever. If I'm restoring it, doesn't matter.
So if you suspended it, you have to go BG to bring it forward foreground. FG to bring it foreground. So break it, Control C, not Command C, Alt C, but Control C.
Well, I like to use did that work? Let me get one of the password.
No problem.
So what do we need to do?
We're done for now, up to 3 steps, right? We are not taking the other direction because that direction will take you to the ops code prescribed method of doing it, which is what they do. In our machine, we have already pre-configured. You can skip those steps of installing Chef. That step that she was trying to do is actually installing Chef, but it's already installed.
So this .zip file, we can just say unzip.
Yeah, .chef. No, there's no .chef to unzip. It will be called
Chef starter.zip.
Yeah, Chef starter. You can
Just look at
unzip,
your directions on the
and when you
on
unzip,
the cloud
it
library.
will look like this.
Step 3 in the cloud library.
From the cloud library.
From the hosted, using the hosted Chef server. It tells you what commands to write to do. Fancy.
It is really cold.
It is.
It
Oh,
was
we don't-
chilly. I thought I was sick. I was chill.
I think I am sick. I am sick.
You were sick, but it's still cold.
Yeah, it is cold.
Using Chef server? That's
So
not
next
right.
time we do
Using
class,
Chef, a host, no, the
first thing,
host server, Chef host server. or
That's
host server,
73.
something like that, whatever those.
Step it is really cold today. I don't know why.
well, so that's the other thing, is when I'm sitting right here, that thing is blowing right on me.
And sorry for missing lunch today. I could
No
not.
worries.
You don't want me like this.
No, absolutely not. You should get better soon.
We'll meet again.
Yeah, probably next week.
Sure.
So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mary, should feel better.
Coming up a little bit. Yeah.
Just stay here. Work from
But let me know how it goes. Maybe I'll call you in the afternoon.
there. Okay.
And once we get either one of those people working on it,
Mhm.
and then lock it, and then you guys, then we'll talk to the next person. Because then they can say, who's there?
Wait, hold on.